that meeting with Elon Musk. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us. I understand that at that meeting, Musk explains some of the specific methodology that DOGE is using to go about making cuts, and that he did get some pushback from some of your colleagues who want Congress to be more involved in the process. Do you think there needs to be more oversight and a clear, specific outlining of his methodology to Americans, to taxpayers?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. Really appreciate it. You know, I think that there's been a little bit of misinformation about Elon Musk's involvement with Congress. There's been this idea that Elon Musk is going rogue and has no interaction with Congress and very little communication. Nothing could be further from the truth. Last night, I met, along with the DOGE subcommittee, which I sit on, with Elon Musk. We discussed how we could work together. We discussed plans going forward, how we could best interact and push the ball forward to slash waste, fraud, and abuse from the federal government. Right after that, Elon Musk met with the entire Republican delegation. He told us about some of the things he was working on, and then he took an open mic Q&A from anybody in Congress on the Republican side who was there, who wanted to ask him whatever they wanted. And with several people, he gave them an answer, and then he stayed back later and had offline conversations. He's been giving his phone number out to senators. He's been in direct communication with the committee that I sit on. So Elon Musk has been working very closely with us. This has nothing to do with him or anybody else going rogue. He's doing what the president, as an employee or a worker for President Trump, has asked him to do, and he's been working closely with us.
So, Congressman, who do you think should answer for some of these mistakes that he acknowledged would happen? Literally hundreds of people being fired and then rehired. Who should be responsible for that? Do you think DOGE could be executing on its mission more efficiently?
Well, first of all, I think we've got to recognize that it's very rare for a government agency like DOGE or anything else to actually admit mistakes whenever they happened. And in this case, Elon Musk has been very straightforward with the American people that we are doing some of the biggest and most monumental reforms to the administrative state in the past 100 years. And through this process, there may be mistakes, but Elon Musk has been very public about what he's doing. He posts about it on his X feed almost every single day. Again, we are talking to him as well. So he said that there may be mistakes, and they're walking it back and cleaning it up. That's exactly what the kind of transparency and accountability we should want from the federal government.
I do wonder about some of what has been posted, because a lot of it has been proven to be completely inaccurate. This wall of receipts that DOGE has on its website has been riddled with errors, many of which they've corrected themselves, confusing billions with millions, triple counting contracts that they've eliminated. They've taken credit for ending programs that were ended in November when Joe Biden was president, even going back as far as 2005 when George W. Bush was president. So it goes back to the question of transparency. You're arguing that Musk is being transparent, but a lot of what's come out is wrong or false, and there have been a lot of mistakes. So I wonder who should be held accountable for those mistakes.
Well, let me back up just a little bit here. What we are doing with the DOGE movement on the DOGE subcommittee and what Elon Musk and President Trump are doing is the biggest and most consequential reform of the administrative state in decades, possibly even in the last 100 years. We have had an administrative bureaucracy that is sclerotic, that is unresponsive to the needs of the American people, and is operating with very little accountability, and is soaking up taxpayer dollars with almost no restraint. And this has been going on for decades. This reform is so desperately needed, and it's exactly what the American people have been asking for. We are $37 trillion in debt. President Trump inherited a federal government that is failing, that is running $2 trillion annual deficits. This cannot continue. It is utterly unsustainable. If we want to preserve agencies like the CDC or other federal programs, we have got to get them under control to make sure that they are financially viable and sustainable. Now, this is such a big process, and we're in the early stages of doing this. And again, this is going to take weeks, if not months, to go. that yes, there may be some confusion, but again, they've been correcting errors, and that is exactly what we should be asking of them. They are doing everything we could ask of them and more.
I guess to that point, I do wonder about their goal of cutting $1 trillion by September. 2/3 of what the government has spent this year alone has been on entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, veterans benefits. Even if you were to take DOGE at its word, which is proven to be inaccurate by their own admission, they've only cut about $100 billion. Again, math that they have provided that hasn't been verified. I do wonder how they're going to get to $1 trillion without cutting into those entitlement programs. Can you guarantee that there won't be a reduction in benefits?
Well, first of all, I think it's a little inaccurate to say that it's by their own admission. They have been correcting errors. And again, that is all we could ask for a reform agency or a reform program to do. But whenever you're thinking of the DOGE cuts, you're right. Elon Musk has estimated that he can find about $1 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse from throughout the federal government. And President Trump laid it out in his his joint address the other day, that we've got people on the Social Security rolls that are listed as being over 150 years old.
That was a
Elon
coding
Musk
error,
talked
sir.
about that to us last night.
That was proven to be a coding error. Even Elon Musk acknowledged that those numbers were off.
Would you let me continue? Because I want to address that. He talked about that last night, and one of the things that he laid out is how illogical the federal bureaucracy is, that we've got multiple government programs and agencies that are not communicating with each other. So the problem with these Social Security entries is that you can identify people who are dead who are still receiving unemployment benefits, for instance, that shouldn't be. And you could solve that simply by allowing them to communicate with each other. He's identified at the Department of Labor that some of their data is owned by a third party. They don't even own their data. I mean, these are serious operational problems that he's going in and addressing, and they've happened because we've allowed the bureaucracy to metastasize with virtually no oversight, and we're finally getting oversight and accountability back to Washington. That's something that everybody, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, should support.
I do want to just point out for our viewers, the allegation that there are 300-year-old people receiving paychecks from the government has not been verified by DOGE. It's believed that that was as a result of a coding error. CNN tried to verify the information that was provided and received no response. I do want to ask you one more question, Congressman.
They said that they did find those listings in there. And to your point, if there is a coding error, that is precisely my point.
Sure, but that doesn't mean that people are receiving checks. That doesn't mean that people are receiving. That doesn't mean that there's a 150-year-old person who's receiving checks, sir. To be clear, they haven't verified that those people received any payments. Those theoretical people. Nevertheless, before we go, Congressman, I do want to ask you one more question that I know is probably personally important to you. You have family who served in the armed forces. I imagine you've heard the news regarding planned cuts at the VA. There's this memo outlining more than 70,000 workers that are set to be let go. Can you assure veterans that their services will not be interrupted by these cuts?
Well, first of all, I want to go back to that. What the problem with the Social Security is that they're not communicating with other agencies that are sending out checks. That's what they've identified. But as it relates to the VA, I'd like to remind people that nobody in the United States has a right by God to have a job at taxpayer expense at the federal government, myself included. But my children and our grandchildren do have a birthright to inherit a country that is not bankrupt. What Elon Musk and what has been proposed at the VA is simply bringing the size of the agency back to 2019 levels. The VA has been a complete mess. I talk to veterans in my district all the time who cannot even get health care because they get on waiting lists that last months and months, and then they get denied, or then they get passed on to another agency or another arm of the VA. It is completely unworkable. So if we want these systems to actually work for the American people, and again, I think that should be the case on a bipartisan basis. Both Republicans and Democrats should want the VA to provide good benefits for our veterans, we have got to get this agency under control. And that's what this administration is doing. This is the first administration that has been serious about getting these agencies under control. And there's been blowback after blowback from the other side of the aisle, unfortunately, who are trying to thwart them every single step of the way. This has got to stop. We want our government to work for the American people.
Congressman Brandon Gill, we have to leave the conversation there. We appreciate you sharing your point of view.
Boris, thanks for having me.
Next, a top